Pope Francis and the church he leads are working to bring millions of Catholics back to it with a new document on love, sex, marriage, and family issues. It is a 256-page report of sorts called the Amoris Laetitia, which is Latin for the joy of love. It's been compiled, really, over the past 2 years as the pontiff interviewed the world's bishops and looked to examine and study cultures and practices among Catholics all over the world. In the report, Pope Francis did a lot, including stressing the importance of not casting judgment. The document also includes details regarding birth control, LGBT issues, and a possible loophole about divorced people and how they do or do not receive Holy Communion. Candida Moss is a professor of New Testament at Notre Dame. Lots to get to. Virtually impossible to do it in our segment, but we'll try. You studied this document. There are a lot of takeaways here, however, perhaps hidden, but what were the biggest for you?
I think the biggest takeaway is that Francis is making marriage and love a real practical issue. He's intensely pragmatic and goes into exquisite detail about the problems facing married couples. So he doesn't want love to be this abstract, dogmatic ideal. He really addresses people's lives. The big takeaways: there will be no marriage for LGBT people, and there's a possibility that if you're divorced and remarried, you might be admitted back into full communion with the church.
Again, this was 2 years in the making, and he really sought the opinions, obviously, of the bishops the world over. There was concern that if he took too strong a stance one way or another, that we might see something of a civil war within the church itself. Is this placating, then, both sides of an issue politically?
Well, there's certainly something for everyone here.
Yeah.
There's been no doctrinal shifts, and he's repeatedly emphasized nothing has changed in teaching. It's all about pastoral tone. At the same time, there's something to irritate everyone. And you could see in the Vatican's reading guide that they're expecting pushback, both from the left and the right.
You mentioned that there was a regional quality here. To put it in perhaps American political terms, there was a sense of states' rights, letting the region perhaps dictate the way parishes applied the doctrine. Is that a step in a different direction for the church?
It might be. He said that not everything has to be determined by the magisterium, that is, in Rome at the Vatican. It can be determined in local communities by bishops and individual priests, and that's reminiscent of what happened in Vatican II, when now local priests are saying Mass in their own language. So we see him giving power to the grassroots, giving power to local churches, and that could be the beginning of something progressive.
It certainly seems thematically to hew to, well, his rise, frankly, to pontiff, that the church seemed to be turning back to its roots, service to the poor, emphasizing the basics, the fundamentals of the flock, if you will. Is there a sense, then, that they're looking to further dig those roots in with regard to how they view the almost billion strong in this church?
Certainly there is a turn back to roots, and there's also a turn to the south. So many of the issues that he identified, things like affordable housing, migration, drugs, violence, these are issues that are affecting Catholics in developing countries in particular. So we see a lot of traditional Francis ministering to the margins of the church.
Do you think that there's a chance that we will see from this Pope any big steps then to the left or to the right of any of these issues specific to, well, first of all, the idea of the Blessed Sacrament of marriage? I know that he discussed annulment in this document, but, you know, it's a term that I think a lot of people think they understand, but it's actually a very difficult process to undergo. It seems that the church, in a way, is worrying about itself as well, about its members, understanding that as divorce becomes more common, certainly in America, where a great deal of its funding comes from, that there's a push to figure out a way to keep these people in the church.
I think that's right, and they are streamlining that annulment process, making it easier, less complicated, and less expensive, which is important for people. And they actually explicitly say why in this document. It's about the children, access to the children who are the future of the church. And while Cardinal Dolan has said people aren't calling for full communion. Where we do see people caring is when we see that generation of divorced Americans aging and then dying. That's when it seems cruel, when they're excluded from the burial rites of the church. So I think this is about gathering people back in and especially reaching out to the Catholic youth.
Again, we saw this released just this morning by the Vatican. At 256 pages strong, there will be lots to parse in the coming days. Professor Moss, we appreciate the time.
Thank you.